Greg. How are you, sir? Thank you for hosting us this week.
Yeah, doing well, Glenn. Thanks for coming in.
Yeah, you bet. It's been a fun week. We've been through boot camp with you, which
Yep.
was a blast,
Yeah,
and we've
yeah.
been swimming in the Fuuz culture.
Nice.
And yeah, so my hope in this opening talk was to get an understanding of how you built the Fuuz culture. It's really what impressed me the most, being inside this building and being so intimate with your team all week.
Yeah, for sure.
So if you will humor me, I'd like to open with a 90s music reference and then a little bit of my personal take on the culture, and then I'll pass the mic over to you.
Sure. Yep.
But do you remember there was a band in the 90s called Blind Melon?
Of course.
You remember?
Yeah.
Cool.
Oh, yeah.
It's our
The
generation.
little honeybee dancing around.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
yeah.
That's exactly the reference that
Yep,
I was
yep,
going for. So
yep.
for listeners, if they don't happen to know, like if they're not as old as us and they don't know this reference, so Blind Melon, the song is No Rain, but they had this iconic music video. And as you said, like the star of this music video is a quirky 10-year-old girl. And this girl, her greatest joy in life is putting on a bumblebee costume and just dancing around. And she wants to share that joy with the rest of the world.
Yep.
And so the narrative arc of the video is she's walking around the city, she's interacting with people, and she goes up to person after person, and she's like, look how fun it is to put on a bumblebee costume and just dance.
Yeah.
and inevitably, every single person looks at her like, you're kind of cute, but I would love it if you just went away. And so she gets stiff-armed time after time. And during the melancholy bridge, like she's losing hope. She's tried for hours and she's walking home all dejected.
Yep.
And then on the way home, she passes by a park. And in this park, there are 50 people dressed in bumblebee costumes, dancing around like crazy. And she's like, oh my God, I have found my people.
Yeah.
Now, how might this have anything to do with manufacturing? The experience that I've had I spend most of my time talking with manufacturing people, going on the road, talking to all sorts of folks. I feel like the bumblebee girl. I'll say things like, hey, if you're not tracking real-time variances against your standard costing at the unit level, you'll have no hope of hitting your gross margin target. You've got 200 basis points of swing, and that's a nightmare. You can't have that type of unpredictable behavior in a public company. Or like you've got a SCADA system. It was built for scalar time series data, and you're trying to do predictive maintenance, which is vector, matrix, tensor data, and is an entirely different data structure, which if you force fit through the SCADA pipe is going to be a nightmare. And just like the bumblebee girl, people are like, Glenn, you seem nice. I would love it if you just went away. And so here, that didn't happen. So I talk about real-time variances in manufacturing, and anyone on your team, whether it's you or Ed or Steve or Lance, everybody, they're like, Glenn, that is a fun topic. Let's sit down and talk about it in depth for an hour straight. And so I'm like, give me 1 second. I'm getting my bumblebee costume and let's do this.
Right,
And so what I feel like this week is I found the park of people like me, and everyone around here wants to talk about this stuff. And so understandably, I'm jazzed. I'm kind of excited here.
Yeah. Well, that's a really fun and ironic analogy that you just put together. I think a lot of that is predicated on the fact that, we didn't build Fuuz to scale it and exit like a lot of, founders do, right?
Yeah.
We built this because we're truly passionate about manufacturing. We're even more passionate about helping manufacturers overcome the type of challenges that they have, whether they're technical or procedural, right? Or whatever, right? Data driven. So everybody on the team has a tremendous amount of, just gumption when it comes to wanting to be there to solve the problems and continuing to drive our system and our technology forward to help enable solving those problems. So I'm glad that you picked up on that. I think a lot of people pick up on that right away, prospects. I mean, pretty much anybody that we talk to, it's not just a demo of functionality in a system, right? We're showing people the solution, how we're going to help them address their problems. So, but we're glad you guys are here, the whole Abalera team. So it's been great to meet everybody in person and, be able to go through the boot camps. And I was just training on some stuff this morning, just last minute. Our trainer came down with a little sickness. So I'm down there going through, forget even what I was doing now. It was so fun. But
I loved
Uh,
it. I was in the audience. The CEO himself is training me through the boot camp. That's
yeah.
pretty special. That doesn't happen everywhere.
Yeah, yeah, we hear that a lot too. I think that's also a little bit of the culture here is that I am not afraid to get my hands dirty. I know the software. Not too many CEOs I've seen actually do demos of their own software.
Yeah.
So I take a lot of pride in being able to not just talk the talk, but also walk the walk.
Yeah.
Yep.
So how did you like the prototypical software company is even if they're in the manufacturing space
Mhm.
are usually packed with devs that are really interested in software development and manufacturing happens to be the space that they're in, but if they
Yeah.
were doing like point of purchase and retail fashion stuff, it'd be the same to them because all they really care about is the tech.
Yeah.
How did you find devs like Lance? Lance is a brilliant dude and knows computer science up and down and
Yep.
sideways, but like he knows manufacturing. He's
Yeah.
your Lance for everyone's reference is your chief technical officer, your
Yep.
head technical guy. How
Yeah.
did you find devs that care about manufacturing?
Um, well, the answer is that we didn't find devs that care about manufacturing. What we did was we hired devs that were strong devs. And remember, we were an SI, right? So we were not ever the type of SI that liked to go and build a lot of one off stuff. So what I ended up doing was finding these really smart guys to come in that knew technology but didn't know manufacturing.
Ah,
These were actually our implementers. So Lance was actually deploying solutions for customers using Fuuz technology. So he was forced to learn manufacturing along the way, right? Because he wasn't just writing JavaScript for the sake of writing JavaScript. He was doing it to solve a traceability issue, right? Or address a costing problem. And so through that process, through osmosis, they learned. And they also learned that you can't just build tech for tech's sake. You have to build it to solve a problem, right?
yeah.
And I think that was key in our success in our journey and how we got here. A lot of companies I think just go out and they start building technology to solve a problem that they think exists, or they engineer a problem that didn't exist that they have now solved. But being that SI first and really going through that pain, and that trouble and those struggles, I think really amped us up as a team to truly embrace and understand what problems we were trying to solve.
Nice. I that's amazing. I had assumed that you found devs that were already manufacturing guys and gals, but it's actually you bred them. You bred them to really love the manufacturing side of
Yeah,
things.
yeah, we're like a family in that way here, Yeah, so it was me and it was several others like Ed, right? And guys that have decades of manufacturing experience under our belts that were able to guide and coach and now those guys like Lance and Ryan and all the others, I mean, now they're in a position that they're guiding and coaching
Yeah.
everybody else, right? I remember one guy we brought on, and I won't mention him because he doesn't like to be mentioned, but um, I tried to explain to him this concept of packaging when he first came. He had just could not wrap his mind around what I meant by packaging. Right? And I was just talking about I've got this coffee mug and I got to put it in a box. The box is the packaging. So we went round and round for like 3 months on this, right? Because academically and philosophically, he had a way of thinking about things that just didn't correlate to real life application. And so we were able to, over time, learn what each other were saying, right? And that's what we've done with everybody that has eventually become leaders within our technology group.
That's great. Yeah.
Yep.
Because I am surprised that Lance doesn't have a manufacturing background. We dove deep on multiple topics. I would have
Yeah.
thought he was a manufacturing guy.
And
born and bred.
he's a founder of a maker space now.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, so he's got that locally in the area, and they've got a number of like members, and they've got shop floor equipment and stuff. So, we not only got him to embrace manufacturing, but now he's passionate about it as
He
well.
is. Yeah, it comes through.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, so you started as an SI. That has two different meanings. When some people hear SI and they come from an IT background, they're thinking about Accenture doing interfaces between enterprise apps. And on the plant floor, SI typically means someone who's doing the commissioning, writing PLC code, making machines talk to one another, putting in a SCADA system.
Yep.
Which one were you, and how do you think about those two groups?
We were more so on the IT side. We were more so implementing ERP systems and iPaaS and integrating between enterprise applications from an IT perspective, but always in manufacturing. So that there was always the problem of IT saying, we got this new ERP system, but we need to get data from the shop floor. So how do we do that? So we were always kind of pushed in a position of also implementing SCADA, layer one, layer two communications, right? Level three solutions. So again, it was one of those things that we were kind of forced a little bit into. And we had the we know what happens on the shop floor. We understand the process. Did not understand the technology at first. We're not I can write ladder logic, but I don't want to write ladder logic, right? But we could do all of those things. Part of my background before getting into the systems integration was I was a robot programmer. I programmed CNC machines. I've done M&G code, right? I've built fixtures on the floor. I've run bridge ports, all the way up to owning my own company and having stamping presses and CNC machines and 6-axis lasers and all of the cool stuff, right? And having to do sales and project management and accounting, God forbid, and all of that stuff, right? To get the business up and going. So then taking all of that experience, helping other manufacturers implement ERP systems, right? So best practices, business process, and being a manufacturing engineer, I know you're mechanical, but my whole genesis is process, right? I need things to go from step 1 to 2 to 3 to 4 every time consistently. So taking that approach with projects, working with manufacturers to go from the shop floor all the way up to ERP, that's where we came up with the idea for Fuuz, because it was just going. There was no way for us to go linearly through a project from one customer to the next customer, because everything was so different. The machines are different, right? Everything's programmed differently. All the technology out there was, fragile integrations
Hmm.
between everything. So trying to overcome those challenges because of my own insecurities when it comes to not following a process. So that's really what we tried to instill. And I'm sure you guys have seen that kind of come through in the Fuuz platform this week, right? We have pretty strict processes built out in the platform for building applications and following the sequence of events, right? So it's it's all come together, right? It's all part of the culture.
Yeah, yeah.
We drink our own Kool-Aid here. I mentioned Lance has his own maker space. They use Fuuz at the maker space to manage all of their people that come and go, the memberships, asset tracking,
Well,
right?
that's great.
Yeah.
It's
So
the same thing that Dylan said. Dylan, my co-founder,
yeah,
the first thing he said after day one of the boot camp was, "I think I could build the ERP that we can run our whole business on top of
yeah,
Fuuz." And
yeah.
I had to walk him back. Hey, one step at a time. Let's.
Right, right.
But he had the same exact reaction, that it was
Yeah,
built with an enterprise application in mind.
yeah.
So yeah, you referenced the a couple of different layers, just in case the listeners aren't familiar with that
Mm.
terminology. You're referencing the ISA 95 or the Purdue
Yep.
triangle. So
Mhm.
like level 0 or layer 0 is typically instruments, sensors on the plant floor, which communicate to level 1, which is PLCs and controllers. Level 2, SCADA, being the network of all those PLCs and controllers. And then level 3, MES, how do you organize the shop floor? Level 4, ERP. So like that's the stack that you're
Yep.
referencing. My personal reaction is that the product, Fuuz as a product, makes most sense in level 3,
Mhm.
but is uniquely capable of performing some of the functions in layer 4 and layer 2. And that's what kind of makes its DNA work so well there.
Yep.
So for example, very few integration like iPaaS platforms have anything to do with integrating a SCADA system all the way up to PLM, ERP, supply chain. Like that's a hard thing to do.
Right.
And if you're designing an iPaaS platform that has to serve both manufacturers, but also everything else like insurance companies and financial institutions and things like that,
Yep.
you're just not going to have the right workflows that I didn't know that this was an insecurity of yours, that it has to be a workflow. So that
Yeah.
your insecurity has been a great service to the manufacturing
Yeah.
world, because you've built in a direct workflow from PLC directly controlling the machine all the way back up to ERP. And so you're effectively an MES layer in between.
Yep.
Although I know you're more than an MES. I mean, no
Yeah.
disrespect by calling you an MES.
No, I think MES is not we don't take that in a negative way at all. I mean, MES is something that very few manufacturers have successfully been able to grasp, right? And a lot of times what I see them calling MES is not truly MES. There's a lot of that going on there too. Some of that is just misguidance
Hmm.
out in the industry. But yeah, MES is the thing that is supposed to bring IT and OT together
In theory.
in theory. Yeah, if you go by ISA 95 or the Purdue model, right, it's the middle piece of the triangle that so many people get wrong. And I think even just looking at it, the way we were implementing things previously with iPass, connecting different systems together also is a flawed approach to this because every system wants to be the source of its own truth,
Hmm.
right? And that the problem there is sort of like that analogy of if everyone's responsible, no one's responsible. And so what you end up with is all these different siloed systems that are now connected. Right? What's the benefit of that? Where is the source of truth for my product data? Where's the
Hmm.
source of truth for traceability and all these other things? And so IT would always solve this problem with an iPass, right? Boomi, Tibco,
Exactly.
Workato. Um, they thought they were solving the problem, right? So they were breaking down some of the silos because now the systems were quote unquote sharing some data. But yet, they're all of these systems and the way a lot of software is designed is what they call to be sticky, means they need to own something, right?
Hmm.
And if they own something, it makes it tougher for the person consuming that software to then displace that software, right? This is ERP 101. And so what we've found is that in order to democratize all of your manufacturing operational data, is you need to get it into a system that all of the other systems can be orchestrated out of, right?
Yeah.
So like all of these other PLM, CRM, ERP are just nodes in the network. Or I think I posted on Dylan's thing, to me, it's almost like you need the DNA, right? Before you start applying the cells, right? Like the nucleus of the cell, and the way the whole body works is like there has to be a single set of instructions. That single set of instructions doesn't come from iPass. It comes from a unified data layer that spans the entire ISA pyramid. Right? There's got to be
Hmm.
a shim that goes north and south through that entire thing, and nobody's done that yet. People have tried,
Yeah.
and it becomes a very very complex thing to try to accomplish.
Yeah. I mean, it's hard for a reason. And so you know better
Yeah,
than anyone that you did it, but it's an entirely different language. So if you're in the world of ERP, that's fundamentally a relational database on the back end. Some of them have NoSQL databases now, but whatever. It's all transactions in a relational database and master data that changes infrequently. And so that's it, master data plus transactions, and all of the modules and workflows flow from that. But then you go to the factory floor and you're talking about all of the factory floor and SCADA systems are built on scalar time series data. Once per second, they grab data from all the sensors and they either send it to where it needs to go or they send it to the plant historian or it's in the closed control loop. But in either case, just picture hundreds, if not, usually it's thousands of data points once per second, like boom, 50,000 data points, 50,000 data points, 50,000 data points. So you're now fundamentally in the world of time series databases, a la the plant historian. And those are very different worlds. And
yeah,
it's a hard bridge to connect, which is
yeah,
why nobody's done it successfully.
yeah.
But how, may I ask, how did you think about connecting those two? Because Fuuz speaks both of those languages natively. Normally, my big challenge is if I'm working with any type of middle ground between an ERP
Hmm.
and the plant floor, one is dominant. Like you can tell within minutes, like, okay, this was built by an ERP mindset, or this
Yeah.
was built by a plant floor mindset. I got to give you credit. You're the one and only platform that feels like both of those are native languages.
Yeah. If I told you, I'd have to kill you. But I mean, that's what makes this different, right? And I think it goes back to the original, genesis of the conversation is the culture piece, right? We have both ends of the spectrum. We started off as an IT SI. We were kind of forced to go downstream to the shop floor, so we understand very well relational databases, ERPs, how all of that works. We understand cloud technology, scalability, security, but then we also understood on the shop floor, highly transactional, very fast, large
Mhm.
amounts of data, things that oftentimes we were being asked by our clients. I want all of this in my ERP. And for the longest time, we kept trying to make that work, right?
Almost always a mistake in my
Right.
experience, but I continue.
But
Preach into the choir.
that's what everybody thinks, right? And there's been this, for the past maybe 2 decades or so, where there's this thought that if I put a new ERP system in, that's gonna help me, get everybody singing from the same sheet of music. I hear that comment from other CEOs all the time who are evaluating ERP systems, and it couldn't be further from the truth. In fact, it probably drives a bigger wedge between, top floor and shop floor,
Yeah,
because no one on the shop floor wants to interface with an ERP system. It's way too rigid. It's too complicated. It's too cumbersome. It's too slow.
yeah,
Um, and nobody's fixed that, and that's okay, because ERP doesn't have to be those things, but there has to be that shim, that MES layer in there
exactly.
that provides that. So understanding that and embracing that and focusing on solving the problem, I think, is the direction that we took, instead of what a lot of others take, which is, let me just keep trying to cram 10 pounds into a 5 pound bag.
Yeah,
And then ultimately it fails, right? We hear about all of the 7, 8 figure ERP deployments that fail, end up in court and all of that, because um, their SIs, whether IT or OT, didn't have that hard conversation with them.
exactly.
I think they were not trusted advisors. I think they were, hey, let's go in and grab some billable hours, and we'll do whatever the customer wants us to do. We'll change order the death out of them, right? And we never had that approach. One thing that I always will educate our prospects on, that are coming with that perspective of like, oh, ERP is going to be the center of my universe,
Hmm.
is that, just think from a transactional volume perspective, how many transactions originate in the ERP system daily, weekly, monthly, versus shop floor system, right?
Way fewer.
Oh,
Way fewer.
way fewer.
Not even close.
It's a
Orders of magnitude.
orders of magnitude different, right? If I'm doing 300 ERP transactions a day, that's probably a decent amount,
Yeah.
right? For a single site, purchase orders, sales orders, whatever else, MRP runs.
That's literally 1 second on the plant floor.
Yeah.
You'll generate
Oh,
300.
yeah, a fraction of a second, probably.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right. I mean, we're doing, 250 millisecond, monitoring of telemetry data on machines that have thousands of tag values. So you're talking
Yep. You've already dwarfed an
tens
entire.
of thousands per second. And so, like, why does anybody think those things can all work in the same system?
Yeah. For me, they can't. They
Yeah.
fundamentally cannot.
Right.
And
Unless the system was intentionally designed for that, right? Which I guess is why you guys are here. That's why we fundamentally designed Fuuz the way we did. That's why we made very specific and deliberate decisions on different types of technology that we used. The technology we selected was almost 10 years ago now, was not ready 10 years ago to do the things we needed it to do, but we had hope that it would come along with us. And we also knew that our engineering team was strong, so that we could build around and kind of make it, prop it up and make it do what we
Mhm.
needed to do. Um, and for example, some of those things, right? I mean, I hate to bring it up and kind of, poke AWS, but just a couple of days ago, right, we had a pretty significant, like, the whole world went dark,
They
right?
did.
Basically. Um, our customers didn't go dark, right? Because we architected the solution for high availability and resiliency, right? So our manufacturers that are running on Fuuz continued to operate without any downtime during that.
Your gateways were still up that whole time. Yeah.
Everything was still running.
Nice.
Even our cloud was still running, because we've developed and architected all of our own services in AWS, right? So everything was, there were dumpster fires all around us, but we were fortunate to,
That's great.
I'll knock on
I didn't
wood,
realize your cloud stayed up. I assumed
Yeah.
it was because of the gateway. It was
yeah,
it was a hot topic in the office, obviously.
the
'Cause there's
cloud was
playground.
resilient. We had a couple of little blurbs. So, we have 3 environments: a build, QA, and production.
Mhm.
Production was unscathed. Build had a couple little things that kind of, but it didn't impact anybody's real production. So,
Yeah.
again, knock on wood.
Yeah.
Because maybe next time we won't be so lucky. But at least that's the approach we took. Is we didn't want to rely on anybody else. We didn't build this through acquisition. It's not a bunch of bolted together type of things, right? We built it very intentionally, and with the sole intent of solving the problems. That's one of the problems we needed to solve, because that was an issue our customers had when we were working with them as an SI, right? The cloud goes down, their cloud ERP would go out all the time. The server on the shop floor that was running, their ignition gateways or whatever would have to be back, all of those
Yeah.
things, right? And so it was just constant. So that's where we set out to try to solve those problems that we saw through hundreds of deployments.
Makes a lot of sense. Yeah.
Yep.
So the thinking to the future now, selfishly, we are on a mission to unite two different teams that typically don't interact well with the manufacturing floor, specifically maintenance and predictive maintenance and finance and accounting. Right now, the reason that it's tough to integrate maintenance and predictive maintenance with factory operations is the exact same reason that it's tough to integrate ERP with factory integration. In the maintenance and predictive maintenance world, the data is not scalar time series data. And so you can't force it through the SCADA pipe. It's vector, matrix, tensor data. And so it needs its own suite. Fuuz looks like a beautiful way that we can start to bring together the fact that there are specialty databases that in truth, I don't think you probably could build. I wouldn't recommend it.
We're not trying to solve every problem.
Yeah, there exist that data's hard. I spent a career trying to figure out how to get it all together in one spot and apply machine learning, et cetera.
Yeah, for sure.
And databases exist to do that because they were structured from the ground up for vector, matrix, tensor data.
100%.
But now Fuuz, understanding that you can take scalar data outputs, which SCADA will take all day long. Like Fuuz can connect through an MQTT broker, through if you have ignition, you can get it through ignition. You have a way to get predictive maintenance data all the way back to the enterprise. But what you're doing is, an engineer would say dimensionality reduction. This specialty database is doing a ton of dimensionality reduction and then spitting out, you do or do not have a problem with your machine. That's something you need to take into account. Or here are some scalar data values that are good, but not nearly the fullness of what you can do diagnostic-wise in this database. And so that's thread number one. I'm excited to bring predictive maintenance all the way back to the ERP, frankly, via Fuuz. That's one thread of excitement. And
yeah, absolutely. And we're excited to work with some of your other partner companies as well, like MaintainX and, these guys to try to help bridge some of those gaps as well. We've worked with them in the past on other projects. So, we'll actually be talking about that next week. We're in Chicago. We'll be presenting on a project we did jointly with them. We're excited to be able to bridge those gaps. We're not trying to be everything to everybody. We're trying to be that shim that gives us that central place where we can analyze and assess. And we're also to that point. We're working with some OEMs right now on gathering some of that data right off of their machines and give them some similar functionality. So in Fuuz, we can do the predictive analysis, and based on that, right, we can find patterns, report, and we can do the solve piece. Because we can go back to the source system or we can go to the ERP and we can make those systems behave and act in a way that naturally they wouldn't be able to on their own because we can be the orchestration layer for them.
Yeah, which is great. And I'm openly biased. Waits is the Avalara partner for predictive maintenance. But of course, we want the health of the entire ecosystem. For sure. Anyone who's doing predictive maintenance, I'm a fan. I am openly biased that Waits is my favorite.
Everything plugs in. Everything plugs in with an open architecture.
Which is perfect, which is perfect. And yeah, you're right. In the hallway just before this, we had a discussion about how OEMs can use the platform. That's probably more than we can dive into here. It's call that a third area of excitement. But yeah, the other one for me before we wrap is accounting and finance. When I was running a plant, some of my favorite employees were in accounting and finance. And the ones that were really good, they would get out on the plant floor, they would understand at a gut level where various cost variances or variances against standard, against routings, against any of the work center stuff, they would understand at a gut level where those variances were coming from. But I felt bad that the finance folks had no tooling. They had no automation to feed that data to them. And so what they would do is the really great ones got a gut level understanding by spending time in the trenches on the plant floor, and then went back and had an absolute nightmare of trying to fit together the data to figure out what actually happened. Where are these variances coming from? Which ones are material versus not? And I can't wait to preach the gospel of the plant floor and of Fuuz to the accounting and finance team, because they put in so many hours. It was just wrong at a human level. The amount of human like cognitive horsepower that's applied to trying to backfill a story with the wrong tooling to why you're getting variances at a very granular level on the plant floor, it's such a waste of talent. And I think about all of my favorite finance and accounting partners and how much they could do if they had that available to them. That gets me pretty excited.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I mean, just the whole theory of democratizing data across the entire enterprise, right, and making all of the data contextual and available for everything, for everyone throughout the entire business, whether you're in engineering or finance or
Yeah,
management, whatever. Everybody needs the data. They all need it for different reasons. I think that's really the premise of bringing it all together and eliminating all the data silos.
exactly. Yeah.
Yep.
And literally everybody in the universe says something like that, but it's only your platform that I can actually say, okay, that's a great philosophy, but
Yeah.
what is, I have these variances against standard. What happened? Like, and then
Yeah.
you can
Yeah.
actually drill all the way down to the machine level, to the work center level, and answer those questions real time if you care to,
Yeah.
and then track your variances against standard, so you can actually hit a predictable gross margin number at the end of the quarter.
Yep.
I'm famous for telling the narrative that like the worst 10 days of my life was the 10 days after quarter close, because you would know exactly where your revenue was going to land, and you had this like 400 basis point swing on gross margin
Yep.
while everybody was figuring out how the how the variances to standards stacked up.
Yep.
That was I still have ulcers
Yeah.
from those periods. Like,
Yeah.
man, I hope it's going to come out like I predicted, but you
Yeah.
just didn't know.
No, yeah,
Man.
absolutely. It's a lot of just chasing your tail around through the plant, and just management by walking around, right?
Totally.
You just got to do your Gemba walks and get out there and figure out where everything's at. And I think to your point, there's a lot of folks in the industry that talk about this as being sort of a utopian or like ideal, concept, right? They talk about this, democratization of data, access to real-time events streaming through the business as though it's something that you have to go build. I think that's the misconception,
Mhm.
when it's been built, and you can have this quick, right? You don't have to spend 3 to 5 years building this infrastructure out so that you can get to the point that you're talking about.
Yeah.
And I think that's some of the exciting stuff that we're doing here, and that we do with our customers is, they're seeing those benefits in 9 months or less typically.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
It's impressive. It's fast, way faster than I thought possible.
Yeah.
So, yeah. No shortage of excitement on my end.
Yeah.
This is going to be fun.
awesome,
Yeah.
awesome. Well, again, thanks for coming in, and I know you flew in, so your arms must be tired.
Ba-ding-sh.
So
Yeah.
we're here all week. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's been great. We will talk again, but appreciate you spending some time with us here, and I can't wait for my next visit to headquarters here.
Yeah. Awesome.
All right, take care.